Hello and welcome to Sound Librarian. I'm Stefan Schutz. I'm not hugely into platform games these days, but there is one particular franchise of platform games that ever since we got the first one of the franchise, we've pretty much bought the rest of the franchise almost as soon as they've come out. I'm talking about the Ratchet Clank series. Now, the Ratchet Clank series of games, for me, really set the benchmark in a lot of ways. The gameplay was a lot of fun. The control mechanism was rock solid, and this is really, really important, especially for a platform game. The worlds were always alive. There was so much going on. There were so many animated objects in the background, things moving, things whizzing past, and it made you feel like you were in an alive world. Too many games have got really empty, static worlds. Ratchet Clank was just fun. It was bright, it was colourful, and it had some really, really good sound design in it. And music that I really, really enjoyed listening to. The musical score for Ratchet Clank just bopped along. It felt part of the world. It really, really fitted the world very, very well. It highlighted the action and what you were doing without getting in your face. I also think it was very well written. So we're going to have a look at the original Ratchet Clank, also going to pay attention to some of the dialogue, sound effects as well, and check out why I think it's significant.
Final step, attach robotic ignition system. Thank you for using help desk technology.
Ratchet Clank was one of the more noticeable games of the 3D platform genre. Jak and Daxter was another, and it continued the tradition of platforming games, but once the technology was sufficient enough to allow platforming within a 3D environment, they became a kind of a combination of adventure slash platforming games. The reason why I selected Ratchet Clank is because I actually think that it's the best example of this genre, and it's continued on to be a very, very strong franchise. And I'm not saying that just from the point of view of it being a popular game or the game that sells a lot. I think it's a game that within the platform game genre really defined the bar in a lot of ways. As I mentioned in the introduction, I found the environments to be very alive, the action and controls to be very, very solid. So all of these things contribute to placing Ratchet Clank in a significant position. As far as the music is concerned, which we can hear now in the actual, as we play the game, I think I have to give this style of music its own genre in a way, because I tried very, very hard. I thought about this a bit, trying to think, well, how can I describe this music? I mean, sure, I find it sort of generally funky to listen to, but I tried to sort of work out what sort of genre it might be classified as. And in all honesty, the best thing I could come up with is that I really, really think that this music just needs to be classified as this is game music. Because the style, the way at which it works, the way at which it is structured, this music is designed specifically to accompany gameplay. It's designed to sit in the background, give you an overall feeling of energy and of the movement of the characters and a feeling for the worlds and everything like that, and just a general feel for the game. And, you know, this is a game that is very obviously designed to be a fun, light-hearted game, lots of colours, lots of action. And so this music, I think, fits this purpose so well that the only way that I can describe this game as a genre is by saying this is platform game genre music.
That's nanotech. Never use a skin injury. Yet Gadgetron's patented nanotech system will build your body from the inside out.
And I'm not sure how it would be to sit and listen to in and of itself. It might be fine to have sort of in the background while you were driving. It suits its purpose so well, I think is what I'm trying to say here. And as you go to the different worlds, there's different pieces of music that accompany you. But it just does a beautiful job of sitting as the bass underneath the whole game, accompanying the action. It doesn't get in the way. It doesn't get in your face. It's I've never noticed it loop or repeat. In all honesty, I couldn't tell you how long any of these pieces of music are because I've never really listened to them individually because they just blend in with the game so well.
Use your bongo. Press the circle button to equip it, and the circle button again to follow. You can also use it in first person by holding down the L1 button.
So as far as everything else to do with this game from a sound point of view, I think one of the things that really gives the sound the impression of being nice and clean is that there's a very good range of frequencies used. One of the most common actions within this game is the collection of the bolts that you can see lying around here. They are the currency of this game. You break open these crates, you get a handful of bolts. They've provided a nice mixture of sounds from the point of view of variety, so that you're not just getting the same coin clink again and again. There's a nice balance of lots of different types of sounds, and that works really well. But also, there's a lot of high frequency material there, which means it cuts through and it sounds clean. Here we have a scripted sequence, which we'll just have a listen to.
Interesting.
Yay!
You're quite handy with your wrench.
You bet. I built that ship with it.
Currently, I'm in search of someone who could be of assistance in saving the solar system. Do you know where I might find that fellow?
Well, he's on the radio every week. Other than that, no. Hey, what's with all this save the solar system stuff anyway?
Hello, citizens of... My race, the Blog, have a small problem. Our planet has become so polluted, overpopulated, and poisonous that we are no longer able to dwell here. But I, Chairman Drek, have a solution.
This is the very first game of the series, and so obviously they're finding their feet and getting their groove, I guess you could say. But in general, I found that the story and dialogue presentation, and of course that includes the voice acting, across the Ratchet and Clank series is very strong. The character art suits the genre very well, but the voice acting and the way it's been written, it's very light-hearted. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's just fun. The bad guys are really very old school comic book bad guys.
Your whiny, sniveling, snot-nosed populations form a line behind me and kiss my... We're still on? Well, turn it off, you idiot!
And this is one of the things that adds to its strength. When you get these little cutscenes, even that's the very first cutscene out of pretty much the very first game in the franchise. And from here, they just get better. The characters are just silly and fun. The voice acting is very strong. I think they do a very good job of bringing together a cat thing with giant hands and a tiny robot, and all the other characters that you get introduced to. So, again, we've got another aspect of this game that is a well-crafted aspect, and in this case, it's the storyline and the dialogue. The story isn't anything spectacular. It's very, very cliched. You're the hero, go save the universe. But it knows that. It's not trying to be anything but that. And so what we get here is a light-hearted look at that genre. It knows that that's what it is, and it's not trying to be anything more than that. But in so doing, they've just done a very good job of basically being a basic concept that's been produced very, very well.
Hi there, Fuzzball.
So returning to the sound design, as I was saying, the most common sound being the collection of the bolts is presented very, very nicely in that it is clean, upper frequency material, which means it doesn't get in the way of a lot of the other things that are going on. There are no instruments within the musical score that accompany that area, so you're not getting too much of a clash of frequencies there. And a lot of the other sounds, the explosions and combat sounds, etc., are mixed fairly well across the frequency range. And this is a really, really good way of achieving a good separation within your audio. You don't have lots of sounds at the same frequency all competing with each other, which means they can all sit there nicely together and they can all blend nicely together, and the human ears can discern those individual sounds far more clearly if we don't have them all occupying the same frequency area. Then, of course, there's just the simple fact of actually balancing them out from a volume perspective of which sounds need to be louder, which sounds need to be softer. And again, in general, Ratchet & Clank does a really, really good job of this. So we're now in another environment. We've got a different look here. We've got a different color palette here. This world is again a little bit greener than the one we started on, and we've got some nice vibrant colors. We've got different music in the background, and of course there's the whole challenge of getting through whatever the particular level is that you have to, and overcoming your challenges. So fairly standard fare as far as a platform game is concerned. Exactly what you would expect: running, jumping, the appropriate sounds for those. Ratchet's use of his spanner for combat and dealing with opponents. In a lot of ways, what they've done is they've made a very cliched game. They've made a game that has running, jumping, platform hopping, enemies that you've got to either hit or shoot. This game format has been done 1,000 times. Quite literally, it's been done 1,000 times. However, they've done it better than probably 90% of those other 1,000 games. And this is the trick. You don't necessarily have to do something that's absolutely new and original. Copying an idea or a format is not an issue if you actually do a good job or a better job than most other people. And in this case, they really have done a better job than nearly everything else that's on the market. So here we have another location, and again we get to see some of what I was saying before about the locations being quite alive with vehicles in the distance, and just things going on. And of course we have various different characters that we encounter, and we get set quite often really rather absurd tasks to fulfill. completes this obstacle course to get another piece of equipment that you need. But again, because the game has never taken itself seriously in the first place, this is never an issue. Talking to an electronic version of a superhero who's, bouncing up and down on a spring, telling you to go across some sort of bizarre obstacle course with flying foxes, all seems really quite normal within this game.
It's a robot.
Oh.
And it's the character, again, it's the character acting that really, really sells this whole concept. The whole idea of you having a little robot strapped to your back that you can do weird helicopter moves with and beating up on enemies with a giant spanner, none of this seems unusual within the confines of this game story. From a technical point of view of the implementation of the sounds, I do not find myself noticing, let alone being annoyed by almost any sounds at all that suffer from repetitive use, poor looping, bad implementation. The actual sound balance within the entire game I find very, very clean. And what I mean by that is that there are no times when I'm wondering what's going on because I can't quite hear one sound over another. There's no times when I'm feeling that one sound is too loud with another. These things all might seem very, very obvious. And in a lot of ways, they are very, very obvious. But these are the things that you need to get right. These are actually the basic things you need to get right to produce a good game. And yet, sadly, there are many, many games out there that don't get these things right. It's only when we see them done well that we appreciate how a well-constructed game should sound like. But when you compare it with all the games that are produced in the industry, you realize that the reason why this is a good example is because for every game that's as good as this one, there are dozens and dozens of games that don't get that right. There are dozens of games that don't have clear dialogue and don't have a good mix of the sound effects in comparison to the dialogue, in comparison to the music. So it's very, very easy in some ways to overlook how clean and how effective a game such as Ratchet and Clank is. Because sometimes you don't notice because there are no errors, there are no issues.
Listen up, you loudballs! That was the most pathetic display I have ever seen on that obstacle course!
What do you mean?
We finished the circuit, ma'am.
Oh yeah, but it is weak. When I was competing, I would devour courses like that for breakfast.
Bet that's not all.
If it were up to me, you would drill for the rest of the day. But somehow you managed to impress that fool Captain Quark.
Captain Quark knows about us?
He certainly does. And worst of all, he wants me to give you a prize for that ridiculous performance.
Cool, what is it?
I'm supposed to give you a swing shot, so you can sway to and fro like little insects.
All right, let's see it.
Not so fast. Today, the two of you disgraced my obstacle course, so I am going to make you pay.
But that prize is ours from the captain. That's not fair.
Too bad, life's not fair.
So being the first in the franchise, it very much sets the bar, and I think has set the franchise up for a good beginning. And if you compare the first one with subsequent ones, you see that in general, they just improve upon what they have with each subsequent game. So overall, the franchise is worth having a look at. So the Ratchet & Clank games, I think, have continued to maintain the bar for quality from most of the aspects of production. And the sound and music has always been really, really quite significant. And the dialogue, I think, it's been well written, very well acted, and the whole thing has been assembled and mixed together very, very solidly. So another game worth checking out. Keep an eye out for more in the future. Thank you very much for watching.